Hello and welcome to Spectrum News at 9. My name is Xavier Robert, coming to you live from Uyo, the capital city of Akwa Ibom. Let's take a look at the headlines. President Tinubu says he invoked the spirit of freedom in Ogun. Court grants order on fans, toll gates and parking lots revenue. Plus, U.S. Supreme Court bans use of race in university admissions. Details of these stories and more in a moment. We'll begin tonight with a report that from the #1 citizen where President Bola Tinubu says he invoked the spirit of freedom and determination in Ogun State, where he faced some hurdles before the February 25, 2023 presidential election. He spoke today in Ijebu-Ode, Ogun State, when he visited the palaces of the paramount ruler of Ijebu land, Oba Sikiru Adetona, and the Alake of about achieving victory in the last presidential election, despite the ineffective cashless policy implemented by the Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN. Reflecting on the challenges in the build-up to the 2023 presidential election, Tinubu recounted his concerns about the confiscation of funds and the failure of the cashless policy, and how he had previously sought wisdom and guidance from Oba Adetona.
No money, no fuel. I credit you. Thank you. To many of you here, I just want to, I didn't know that it would be like this. I only wanted to sneak in and sneak out. Green cabbage. Now I know what it is. Is housing. And having achieved the prayer of a Meloko and being here, I've redeemed a pledge that I will be back with victory and the crown. Let me purposeful. No distractions. We will arrive at the destination, a positive destination for this country.
The hardships they are facing would soon turn to prosperity. They said the current pains were necessary, noting that the people's sacrifices would pave the way for abundance and a better future for the country. Tinubu and the governors spoke in separate statements on the Salah celebrations across the country. Speaking in Lagos shortly after observing the Eid prayers at the Obalende Muslim prayer ground located near Dodan Barracks, the president said the country had to make the sacrifices for future development. His message was contained in a statement signed by his special advisor and Special Duties, Communication and Strategy Dele Alake. Away from that now, the federal government has notified professional bodies and councils that it would cease to fund them beginning from the 2024 budget in line with the decisions of the Presidential Committee on Salaries (PCS). The Director General Budget Office of the Federation BOF, Ben Akabweze, conveyed the message via memoranda sent to the professional bodies. Also confirming the memoranda, the Senior Technical Advisor to the Director General Budget Office of the Federation, Olumide Ayodele, stated that stoppage was a recommendation in the Orosanya Committee report and the recent Presidential Committee on Salaries. Moving on now to the judiciary, where the Federal High Court in Lagos has approved a Freedom of Information (FOI) request trying to know the Federal Airport Authority of Nigeria fans' income from toll gates and parking lots since 2015, and whether same was remitted to the Federation account. Specifically, Justice Akintayo Luko granted leave to registered trustees of the Center for Reform and Public Advocacy to file an order of mandamus against FAN to answer the applicant's FOI request of August 24, 2021. Justice Akintayo Luko granted the leave while ruling on an application by the registered trustees of Center for Reform and Public Advocacy in the suit. The judge also granted an order for an extension of time within which to file the ex parte application seeking an order of mandamus against. From the judiciary, of Federal High Court sitting in Abakaliki, Ebonyi State capital, has granted the request by the People's Democratic Party (PDP) to withdraw a suit it instituted against Ebonyi Governor Francis Ogbonna Nwifuru, challenging his nomination as governorship candidate by the All Progressives Congress (APC) for the 2023 general elections. The PDP in a suit challenged and could not have been nominated by the APC as its 2023 governorship candidate in Ebonyi State. It will be recalled that the court, presided by Justice Fatun Riemann, on February 4, 2023, struck out the case on the grounds that Ogbonna Nwifuru and the APC against the PDP's suit. In a separate development, the Chief of Air Staff Hassan Abubakar and the Chief of Army Staff Taurid Logbaja have urged troops at the various theaters of operations to work in synergy with other security agencies. They appreciated the troops and their families, particularly the dead and the wounded, for their sacrifices towards ensuring peace and security in Nigeria, urging the troops to ensure that the synergy cascades down to the tactical level of operations through proper coordination, collaboration and cooperation in future efforts. In a statement by the spokesperson for the Nigerian Air Force, Ayodele Famuyiwa, Abubakar attributed the recent operational successes to the combined efforts of the Air Force and land forces, adding that his visit to the theater alongside his army counterpart to celebrate with the troops was an indication of the enhanced synergy about to be infused into future operations. Meanwhile, the Nigerian Navy has reshuffled the appointments of top senior officers, comprising 56 rear admirals and a commodore. The Director of Information, Adedotun Ayo Vaughan, in a statement said those affected by the reshuffling are Olusanya Bankole, formerly the Director of Logistics, Defense Space Administration, now appointed as the Chief of Communications and Information Technology, Naval Headquarters, while Alexander Bengel, formerly Director Combat Policy and Tactics, is now the Director of Logistics, Defense Headquarters, among others. In another development, the Police Force Public Relations Officer, PRO Lumuyiwa Dejobi, has said that the deployment of policemen to individuals will be reviewed and regularized. This was contained in a statement via his Twitter account. The Force PRO was reportedly reacting to a viral video of an unidentified VIP seen being escorted on foot by no fewer than 7 armed mobile policemen. Dejobi condemned the act, which he described as disgusting, and promised to fish out the policemen in the video and bring them to book. Away from that, now, Governor Amadu Fintiri of the Adamawa State has announced the ban on the felling and burning of tree trunks for charcoal production in the state. The governor said today that an existing law against tree cutting and use of tree trunks to produce charcoal for cooking will henceforth be strictly enforced. Ventiri gave the order first when he received traditional rulers who paid him solemn homage from across the state, and later to members of the State House of Assembly who visited him at the government house in Yola on solemn homage. He told the lawmakers, who were led by Speaker of the House of Assembly, Batia Wesley, that they all have a responsibility to ensure the law against tree cutting is upheld. To Delta State now, where the House of Assembly 40 billion naira to defray backlog of pensions owed retired primary school teachers and local government employees in the state. Governor Oboreveri, in a request letter to the House, explained that the credit facility was aimed at assisting the 25 local government councils in the state defray a substantial part of accrued rights of local government pensioners. The letter, read at plenary by the Speaker of the House, Emomotomi Iguwo, said the approval was part of conditions relevant in assessing the facility. The governor noted that at a meeting in his office with local government council chairmen and other stakeholders, it was resolved that a credit facility be sourced from commercial banks to pay the retirees. Meanwhile, Rivers State Governor Siminalayi Fubara has ordered an immediate investigation into the collapse of a two-story building at Rumoke Street off Okilton Junction in Adar George Road, Port Hackett. It would be recalled that a two-story building under construction collapsed early today, injuring 4 persons. Fubara, in a statement by his media aide Boniface Onyeti, said the state government must find out the immediate and remote causes of the incident. Speaking after the inspection of the collapsed two-story building, the governor, who was represented by the Commissioner for Special Projects, Emeka Nwoke, charged the relevant government agencies to immediately fish out those involved in the project. According to him, anyone found culpable will be made to face the law. In another development, Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu met with his predecessors Akinwumi Ambode and Babatunde Fashola at a reception organized in honor of President Bola Tinubu in Lagos. It is the first time in 4 years the 3 men will be gracing the same event. The Chief Press Secretary to Sanwo-Olu, Gbenga Akosile, shared the news in a video posted on his Twitter handle. Before this meeting, Sanwo-Olu had paid Ambode a visit during his birthday party, a gesture that was celebrated by many Lagosians. Back here, on Salah celebration, Akwa Ibom State Governor Pastor Moino has sent his warm wishes to Muslim faithful as they mark the occasion of Eid al-Kabir. In a statement released by his Chief Press Secretary, Kerete Udo, Governor Eno enjoined Muslim faithful and Nigerians across religious lines to reflect on the essence of this occasion, which symbolizes sacrifice, submission, obedience, and love. He urged them to, in the spirit of the moment, rededicate themselves to fostering closer bonds of unity, love, and religious tolerance in the nation. The governor urged the people to arise and lend a helping hand to those on the lower rungs of hope and bring some happy cheers to them. Meanwhile, residents of Uyo, the Akwa Ibom State capital, have decried the state of some of the city's roads in the rainy season. Spectrum Television News on a city tour to report the state of things as the rains continue to pour non-stop for at least 14 hours within 48 hours, spoke to disgruntled residents who have their houses, business premises, and roads overtaken by rainwater. Residents of Nokoritam, an area off Idoro Road, Osongama Estate, Atiku Abubakar axis of the Uyo metropolis, called on government to come to their rescue.
With more rains expected this year in heavier and more consistent torrents, has visited some parts of Uyo metropolis to weigh the state's preparedness for the coming rains. Sights and scenes suggest that the state might grapple with flooding issues in some areas if nothing decisive is promptly done to address the pressing need.
This road, no car can pass it because of the water that is there, but in dry season, they can flow very well. But for now, There's no vehicle that can pass there. If you go down there, the water down there can stop you either by your chest or below your chest.
You can see the flood waters. It covers this entire place. There are some houses in there that have fallen down. The water has swallowed it. I have protected my house and had to protect it using double fence reinforcement.
And this place has been like this every rainy season. It has been challenging, and anytime it's like this, it's always challenging for us to go out. If you enter these streets now, from here down to that GWC side, transport is always very high, number one. Anytime it's like this, it's very difficult for us. The government should look at this street. It has been long. We've been suffering like this for a very long time. They should just try and make a drainage or just look for a solution to this.
Like the way this road is now, it's very difficult for us to go out to our work or to our school. It's very difficult for us to walk. I advise the government to come and make this road and construct this road very well, please, for us, so that we can go out.
This road is not good. Any day when I carry oil, my keke then they stop inside the water. The road no good at all. Oh. You need work. I want government may call help us, but the clear the road may come fine. Oh.
Still to come in the news. U.S. GDP growth revised sharply higher by 2% in Q1 of 2023. Please stay with us.
Business exists only to meet the needs of the people, but There's an extra advantage if your product and services are pitched on a platform that gives you the added advantage over your competitors. For your desired return on investment and so much more, advertise on Spectrum Television, on StarTime's DTH Channel 421 and on free-to-air with a frequency of 12733. Spectrum Television, broadening your horizon.
Thanks for staying tuned. We move on now to Africa, where Rishi Sunak has said that the government will appeal against a court ruling which deemed plans to send asylum seekers to Rwanda as unlawful. Court of Appeal judges ruled Rwanda had not provided enough safeguards to prove it is a safe third country. The Prime Minister said he fundamentally disagrees with the ruling and said the government will challenge it in the Supreme Court. The charity which brought the challenge welcomed the ruling. A spokesperson for asylum aid said the decision was a vindication of the importance of the rule of law and basic fairness. But Sunak said that while he respects the court's decision, he will do whatever is necessary to disrupt criminal gangs operating small boat crossings. Still in Africa, Morocco is recalling its ambassador to Sweden following the burning of a Quran at a demonstration in Stockholm. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs in the capital Rabat called the action offensive and irresponsible at a time when Muslims were celebrating one of the holiest days in their calendar. The organizer of the demonstration, who is said to be Iraqi-born Salwan Momik, is being investigated for incitement to hatred. Meanwhile, a Swedish court had ruled the protest should be allowed to go ahead on grounds of freedom of expression. Meanwhile, the Gorongosa National Park in central Mozambique has invested more than $1 million in the construction of 6 schools to absorb students to study in the surroundings of the local mountain range. The administrator of the conservation area, Pedro Moagura, says that this is an initiative that brings together several partners aiming to improve access to basic services for the local community. The project includes the construction of laboratories, sports fields, and houses for teachers. Reports say the park, one of Mozambique's famous conservation areas, was for many years badly affected by a rebel conflict. Meanwhile, most of its wildlife decimated during the Civil War has been restored thanks to an investment from the US-based Greg Carr Foundation. In the meantime, the International Committee of the Red Cross ICRC says it has facilitated the release of 125 Sudanese soldiers held by the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces RSF. The ICRC said the troops, many of them wounded, had been taken by bus from the capital Khartoum to the city of Wad Madani to the south. The war between Sudan's army and the RSF has caused a major humanitarian crisis, displacing nearly 3 million people. Elsewhere, German car manufacturer BMW has announced that as of next year, its X3 models will be exported from South Africa to countries all over the world. According to the chairman of the management board of BMW South Africa, Milan Nedeljkovic, in a statement, they will be produced in the company's Roslyn plant with an investment of 4.2 billion South African rand. He added that from there, the plug-in hybrid would be exported all over the world. South Africa is a manufacturing hub for several international manufacturers, including Toyota and Ford. In the meantime, Ethiopia has formally requested to join the BRICS alliance and says it is hoping for a positive response. According to Foreign Minister Meles Zenawi, BRICS, which is an acronym for Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, is seen by some as an alternative to the G7 group of developed nations. Ethiopia is one of the biggest economies in Africa and has enjoyed an increase in trade with China and India, among others, but its economy has recently been ravaged by war and drought. It would be recalled that earlier this month, the BRICS group said they had received requests from dozens of countries, including a few African states, that wished to join the club of emerging economies. Meanwhile, BRICS countries have a combined population of more than 3.2 billion people, making up about 40% of the world's roughly 8 billion people. Still in Africa, South Africa High Court has ruled the decision of the country's government to terminate the special residency permits of around 180,000 Zimbabweans as unconstitutional. Reports say the Zimbabwe exemption permit system was introduced about 13 years ago to deal with the surge of migrants from its northern neighbor. They had fled economic hardships and political crackdowns. The report said if implemented, it would force Zimbabweans to return home unless they obtained regular work visas, even if they had children who were born in South Africa and were South African citizens. Recall that the 4-year visas were repeatedly extended, but in 2021, the government said it intended to end the scheme that had allowed the Zimbabweans live and work in South Africa. Meanwhile, a court in France has sentenced to life imprisonment a former Rwandan police officer, Philippe Hategekimana, after finding him guilty of genocide and crimes against humanity. Hategekimana's crimes took place during the 1994 Rwandan genocide, when Hutu militias reportedly killed hundreds of thousands of Tutsis and moderate Hutus. The prosecutors described him as having played a central part in carrying out the killings, not only murdering people, but inciting others to do so. Hategekimana, who had worked as a senior gendarme in Nyanza, a town in the south of the country, allegedly fled to France after the genocide. On the foreign scene, the Supreme Court has struck down affirmative action in college admissions, forcing institutions of higher education to look for new ways to achieve diverse student bodies. The court's conservative majority overturned admissions plans at Harvard and the University of North Carolina, the nation's oldest private and public colleges, respectively. Chief Justice John Roberts said that for too long, universities have concluded wrongly that the touchstone of an individual's identity is not challenges bested, skills built, or lessons learned, but the color of their skin. In a separate dissent, Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, the court's first black female justice, called the decision a tragedy for all. It will be recalled that the Supreme Court had twice upheld race-conscious college admissions programs in the past 20 years, including as recently with voluntary homicide, and placed under arrest today ahead of trial over the killing of a teenager at point-blank range, which sparked nationwide protests. Thousands gathered to honor the victim alongside his family and loved ones in his Paris neighborhood. France's Interior Minister said 40,000 police officers will be deployed tonight to quell any French outbreaks of violence. It will be recalled that the 17-year-old victim, identified only as Nahel M., was shot in Nanterre when he was pulled over for traffic violations. Meanwhile, France has approved a new law today requiring social media platforms like TikTok to verify users' ages and obtain parental consent for those under 15 years in an effort to protect children online. Reports say the legislation is part of a string of recent moves by the government to reduce children's screen time and protect them from cyberbullying and other crimes. France's Digital Transition Minister Jean-Noël Barrot told lawmakers that the LONMAC, from just 8 years of age, and more than half of children aged 10 to 14 use social media sites like Snapchat and Instagram. Meanwhile, the exact date the age verification bill will come into force remains unclear, as no specific date was set, and the European Commission has yet to check that it conforms with EU law. Elsewhere, Russia's most senior generals have dropped out of public view following a failed mercenary mutiny aimed at toppling the top brass amid a drive by President Vladimir Putin to reassert his authority and unconfirmed reports of at least one arrest. Valery Gerasimov, Russia's top general, has not appeared in public or on state TV since the aborted mutiny on Saturday, when mercenary chief Yevgeny Prigozhin demanded Gerasimov be handed over. Meanwhile, he has not been mentioned in a defense ministry press release since June 9 either. According to some Western military analysts, Gerasimov, age 67, is the commander of Russia's war in Ukraine and the holder of one of Russia's 3 nuclear briefcases. Absent from view, too, is General Sergei Surovikin, nicknamed General Armageddon by the Russian press for his aggressive tactics in the Syrian conflict, who is deputy commander of Russian forces in Ukraine. And now it's time for the latest business and stock market stories. Here is Davina Praise Oman.
Thank you, Xavier Roberts. Good evening. It is another business day. My name is Davina Praise Omang. In the news, the U.S. economy grew by an annualized 2% on a quarterly basis in the first quarter of 2023, well above 1.3% in the second estimate and forecast of 1.4%. Consumer spending growth accelerated more than expected to 4.2%, the strongest in nearly 2 years despite stubbornly high inflation. Spending on durable goods surged 16.3% and services rose 3.2%. Exports were up at 7.8% and imports rose at a slower 2%, pushing the contribution from net trade higher to 0.58 percentage points. On the other hand, non-residential fixed investment growth was smaller than initially expected and government spending was revised lower. Main drags to the GDP growth came from private inventory investments and residential fixed investments. Last quarter, the U.S. economy grew 2.6% and the Fed sees growth reaching 1% this year. The energy market. Nigeria's price benchmark, Brent crude futures rose back above the $74 per barrel threshold today, driven by a larger than anticipated decline in U.S. inventories. Investors simultaneously assess the potential impact of forthcoming interest rate hikes on global economic growth and fuel demand. The Energy Information Administration's most recent report revealed a significant drop of 9.6 million barrels in crude inventories last week, surpassing market projections of a 1.8 million barrel reduction. Traders also fretted about Saudi Arabia's voluntary supply cuts in July, amid existing production cuts already agreed by OPEC Plus member countries. In Nigeria, the Nigeria Data Protection Commission (NDPC) on Thursday described the Central Bank of Nigeria's new directive to banks on social media as illegal. The Apex Bank had last week directed the country's commercial banks to obtain the social media handles of their customers as part of Know Your Customer (KYC) requirements. It added that the directive was in line with the Customer Due Diligence 2023 regulations meant to prevent financial crimes and terrorism financing through the banking system. However, through a statement issued by NDPC's head of media, Itunu Dosekun, the National Commissioner Vincent Olatunji said the CBN's request was illegal and against the Nigerian Data Protection Act signed by President Bola Tinubu on June 12th. He added that private or government data controllers or organizations obtaining individuals' data are guided by laws. The Nigerian energy stocks are in their best quarter in 9 years after the new government announced a resolve to pursue several market-friendly reforms. It has never been so fruitful for the energy shares of Africa's second biggest bourse since the second quarter of 2014 as now. According to NGX Oil Gas, the index which trades the performance of that sector having yielded 50.7% since April. The index is only outperformed by the progress of insurance equities out of the 5 sector indexes on the Nigerian exchange. While oil and gas equities have yielded 66.5% since the start of the year, they have added 41.2% in 52 weeks, according to the Nigerian exchange data. MRS Oil leads the pack of the 6 benchmark stocks with a yield of 182.6% so far this quarter. This is all in business news, and back to Xavier Roberts for the rest of the news.
Many thanks, Davina. Still to come in the news. Ex-world number 1 Wozniacki announces return to tennis. To stay with us. Many thanks for staying tuned. Now in health, National Agency for Food and Drug Administration and Control (NAFDAC) today alerted Nigerians of an unwholesome Sprite 50 cl glass bottle drink with batch number AZ62232. The agency, which also announced this on its Twitter handle at NAFDAC agency, said the contaminated glass bottle drink were manufactured April 18, 2023 and has an expiry date of April 4, 2024. The agency added that the product was discovered following a consumer complaint, and upon investigation, over 5 crates of the batch were discovered to be contaminated with particles. In a statement, the agency explained that the affected batch of the unwholesome product have been sampled for laboratory analysis in its laboratory. The agency said it has also directed all the agency's zonal directors and state coordinators to carry out surveillance and mop up the implicated batch of the unwholesome product. So in health now, dermatologists have said that people with vitiligo are predisposed to certain health conditions such as hearing impairment, vision, and consistent sunburn, among others. According to a clinical and cosmetic dermatologist and the director of residency program at the Renaissance School of Medicine, USA, Adrian Horton, the medical condition is characterized by premature whitening of the hair on the scalp, eyelashes, eyebrows, nose, and birds. Horton added that the disease can start at any age, but usually appears before the age of 30. Therefore advised that anyone showing the symptoms should urgently seek medical intervention. Meanwhile, a consultant obstetrician and gynecologist at the Lagos State University Teaching Hospital Ikeja, Dr. Yusuf Oshodi, has advised pregnant women against self-medicating to induce labor in order to avoid undergoing cesarean section CS. Speaking in an interview with Newsman, the maternal health expert, who is an associate professor at the College of Medicine, revealed that some pregnant women who earlier delivered their babies through CS take certain medications in subsequent pregnancies to induce labor in hopes that it would help them have vaginal births. Oshodi warned that there are indications for induction of labor and that such factors. Now in sports, former world number 1 Caroline Wozniacki announced today she is set to return to professional tennis 3 years after retiring to start a family. Wozniacki, aged 32, bowed out in 2020 after winning 30 WTA titles, including her sole Grand Slam triumph at the Australian Open in 2018. Wozniacki has 2 children with former NBA player David Lee, 2-year-old Olivia, and James, born last October. Still in sports, France's top administrative court today upheld a ban on women football players wearing Islamic hijab headscarves after the issue was seized on by politicians claiming secularism was at risk. It found the French Football Federation FFF rule against any sign or clothing clearly showing political, philosophical, religious or union affiliation during play to be appropriate and proportionate. A group of Muslim women footballers called the Hijabusers had launched the action against the FFF regulation. Meanwhile, judges found themselves under political pressure ahead of the rules, a sensitive topic in France, presented by its defenders as a way of guaranteeing the state's religious neutrality, and by critics as a dog whistle against ethnic and religious minorities, especially Muslims. In football, Chelsea midfielder Mason Mount is set to undergo medicals with Manchester United ahead of a summer move. The Blues have accepted a £60 million fee for the England midfielder today. Meanwhile, Mount is expected to sign a 5-year deal with the Red Devils. A breakdown shows that United will pay a £55 million fixed fee plus £5 million in add-ons. Still in football, the head coach of the Super Falcons of Nigeria, Randy Waldrum, has said his team is not adequately prepared for next month's FIFA Women's World Cup. Waldrum decried the lack of support from the Nigeria Football Federation (NFF) while appearing on the Sound Enough of Soccer podcast hosted by John Krasinski. He added that they were supposed to have a camp for 10 to 12 days in Nigeria before going to Australia for another 10 to 15 days, but that the Federation cancelled the camp in Nigeria. For trending entertainment stories, here is Simon Oko.
Nollywood actress Tonto Dike has reacted to reports that popular singer Davido impregnated a US model, Anita Brown. Now remember that Anita had taken to Instagram to accuse Davido of impregnating her. She also shared a screenshot of an alleged chat between the both of them and did a pregnancy test on her live video. Also, another French lady identified as Ivana Bay on Wednesday called Davido out for being responsible for her pregnancy. Reacting to the allegations, Tonto Dike said Davido can do no wrong in her eyes, alongside a picture of the singer and his wife, Chioma, in Qatar. She wrote in her words, she said, "There are people who can do no wrong in your eyes, and you are one of them. Love and light, my G. I'm sticking with you, and that's on IGN." She added. Away from Tonto Dike, Grammy Award-winning Nigerian singer Damini Ogulu, popularly known as Burna Boy, has reckoned that he doesn't get enough credit despite being the best in the world. Surrounded by a team of industry experts, including Nigerian-British show promoter Adesegun Adeosun Jr., popularly known as Smade, and podcaster Adesokpe, popularly known as Shopsido, after a performance at the Afro Nation Festival in Portugal, Burna Boy said he's not bothered about not getting enough credit because Jesus didn't get his credits till after his death. The African giant crooner in a viral video said he appreciated the fact that people are testifying that he is the best musician in the world. Still on Burna Boy, Ira Star and Oxley performed at day one of Afro Nation Portugal. Nigerian superstars thrilled Afrobeat fans in Afro Nation Portugal. As Afrobeat continues to rise in global acclaim, the music is reaching listeners across different parts of the world, and Nigeria superstars are headlining choice venues across these cities. Afro Nation is a musical festival that brings African superstars to listeners across different cities for a live experience. The latest stop for the festival is Portugal, which had a lineup of multiple acts, including where Afro Aya Nakamura and Cape Verdean star Soraya Ramos. Now, on the lineup were also South African stars such as Maphorisa, DBN Gogo, Tyler ICU, Pabi Cooper, and Daliwonga, who gave the Portuguese fans a captivating Amapiano experience. Burna Boy, who headlined the opening day, thrilled listeners with a collection of his hit singles, including Last Last, Yay, Killing Them, and For My Hand. Afro Nation is one of the concerts that's taking Nigerian music to different parts of the world for listeners to connect with the music. The concert has taken place in different parts of the world, with recent stops at Miami, United States, and Portugal. Afro Nation has announced that the concert would be coming to Nigeria in 2023, and that would be the first stop in Nigeria. The announcement was made on social media on the 9th of June 2023. Away from that now, Nigerian music star Adekunle Gold is talking tough ahead of his upcoming album Tequila Ever After. Adekunle Gold is one of the most talented singers and songwriters in the Nigerian music industry, with his music winning him the admiration of millions of fans around the world. Adekunle Gold also stated that once his album drops, if you're a fan or not, you will have no choice but to feel the music. In addition to the release of his 5th album, Adekunle Gold will be kicking off his 2023 summer tour in September 22nd at the House of Blues in Dallas, Texas, before making stops at several cities where he will dazzle listeners with his superlative stagecraft. And finally, Nollywood actress Iyabo Oko is dead. Barely weeks after Yoruba Nollywood actor Murphy Afolabi died, another veteran Yoruba actress, Sidikat Odukanwi, popularly known as Iyabo Oko, has died. According to her daughter, who broke the news via her Instagram account, the actress, who battled an undisclosed ailment, died on Wednesday. Though details of the cause of her death are yet to be revealed, her daughter BC Aisha confirmed news of her death. She wrote, "It is well with your soul, mommy, R.I.P." That's it on the entertainment scene. My name is Simon Oko. Back to the news.
And that's all we have for you at this time. Do ensure to follow us on social media and subscribe to our YouTube channel, all of which you can find on our website, spectrumtv.ng. You've been watching Spectrum News at 9. My name is Xavier Robert. Wishing you a terrific night rest. Bye-bye.